Part 18. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chenmi-san. Chapter 172. It seems that the commander of the First Fleet is also very afraid of the replication ability of those insects, K-Lan said. All the warships of the First Fleet are only conducting long-range bombardment several kilometers away, and have no intention of continuing to move forward. In this way, even if one's own warships are unfortunately shot down, they will not fall on Leviathan and suffer damage. To the other party's copy. The 4 attacking guards' mechas each carry a strange-looking railgun. The barrel of this gun is nearly 20 meters long, which reserves a sufficient length of acceleration track for the projectiles in the barrel. A single hit could directly destroy a fighter jet copied by Leviathan. The 4 mechas had already shot down 39 enemy planes just by flying past the formation. There is something really good about this accuracy. Even with the auxiliary aiming system, the hit rate of more than 80% at this moving speed is amazing, Hound said with admiration. Of the 39 kills, more than half were achieved by the mecha numbered Xi-167. At this time, all its railgun shells had been fired, and the slender barrel, after being folded up and put back on his back, he switched the weapon to the large caliber cannon installed on both arms of the mecha, and began to shoot at the approaching enemy planes. The number of fighter jets copied by Leviathan was too great. Even with the fire support of the fleet, the 4 mechas were still locked in a bitter battle. Hurry up and send reinforcements to the house god. Leighton clenched his fists and shouted anxiously, "What does the commander of the fleet think? Does he think that just these 4 mechas can kill all these ghosts?" "This should still be a test," K-Lan frowned and said, "but what makes me a little confused is what is the purpose of their test. Could it be said that the commander of the fleet has specific countermeasures? These 4 is the mecha just to verify the feasibility of this countermeasure." Although the number of kills of the 4 guards' mechas was rising, more and more enemy planes were approaching them. Just when they were focusing all their attention on the enemy in front, however, the Night Owl class fighter quietly launched an attack from below, heading straight for one of the guard mechas painted in blue and gray. Red laser beams were continuously shot from the muzzle at the front of the Night Owl, but this lightweight energy weapon was unable to break through the shield of the guard mecha. The distance between them was shrinking rapidly. Just when the Night Owl was about to collide head-on, the blue-gray painted guard mecha suddenly dodged sideways and pulled out a gun from its waist. The short knife was stabbed down quickly, directly penetrating the cabin of the Night Owl class. "Beautiful," Leighton cheered, but the next second, the smile on his face suddenly froze. The pierced Night Owl did not explode. Instead, countless slender fleshy tentacles extended from the fuselage, frantically wrapping around a nearby mecha. The mecha's pilot seemed to want to. He tried to evade, but one of the fastest tentacles had already reached into the thruster nozzle on the back of the mecha. Along with an explosion, thick black smoke spurted out from the thruster. The mecha that lost its main power was quickly surrounded by swarming replicators. More tentacles bound him tightly, wrapped it into a huge meatball, and headed straight towards it. Falling. The myth of the harmlessness of Zakumi Masaoki's team was finally completely shattered today. However, including Xi-167, the remaining 3 guard mechas had no intention of retreating. Not only that, they instead transformed into faster fighter forms and headed towards Levi below. 10 dives away. What are they going to do? Leighton rubbed his eyes in disbelief. Do they still carry large yield bombs on their bodies? No. Their mission is to search. K-Lan held his breath. They are searching for key points on Leviathan to determine the target for the fleet's next key blow. The 3 guards mechas flew over almost against the energy shield on Leviathan's surface, and behind them were followed by a swarm of replicators, including several replicators. It even hit Leviathan's shield directly because of its fierce momentum, and exploded. Just as K-Lan said, the guard mecha did not launch an attack on Leviathan. Instead, after being lifted into the air, it plunged down again and followed another trajectory as it flew past. Several times, the mecha's shield rubbed against Leviathan's shield, dragging out streaks of brilliant fire. Another mecha was bitten by two replicators, but before those tentacles could invade the inside of the mecha pilot resolutely took the two machines and turned them into tentacle monsters. The replicator crashed into the shield below, choosing to die with the enemy. After 4 dives, the entire team was left with only one aircraft, the Xi-167, and its energy reserves had bottomed out. Not only could it no longer maintain the body's energy shield, but even its flight speed had dropped. It was not as good as before, and it was about to be overtaken by the copying machines at the end. But at this moment, Masayuki Zami's voice suddenly rang in the communication channel of the entire fleet. Even Kaylan and the others could hear it clearly. "Found it? I found it. Coordinates 522, 794, depth 880 meters. I'm looking for..." His voice stopped abruptly, and a red beam of light penetrated the cockpit of the Guardian mecha. The next moment, the entire mecha disintegrated in the explosion, and the fragments fell from the sky trailing thick smoke. The house god was killed in battle. Leighton stretched out his hand and pinched his face hard. "Oh, shit, it's true, the house god." Just when Leighton was still in shock and unable to recover for a long time, the flagship of the First Fleet moved. Countless small escape boats flew out from the various hatches of the flagship, and then the flagship began to gradually accelerate and rushed towards Leviathan. What is this for?" Zwilligito asked with his eyes widened, looking at the flagship rushing towards the replicator's gunfire alone. "It was a suicide attack." Kaylan, who was the first to react, said, "I understand." Masayuki Zakumi and his team marked the vital parts of Leviathan's body at the cost of their own lives, and then the flagship with only a minimum of operating personnel is fired as a cannonball. The super-large crystal engine inside the flagship is the explosive in this cannonball. Leviathan's energy shield can block the bombardment of the fleet, but it blocks this supermassive cannonball can't be contained. The reason for this is the same as when the monsters attacked the Soma Consortium base before. Although the energy shield of the base can block the acid spit by those monsters, if these monsters choose to forcefully crash into the shield, as energy bodies however, Leviathan's shield cannot stop them. In the same way, although Leviathan's shield can instantly vaporize all physical shells fired at it, if the mass of this shell is large enough, it will if it penetrates the shield before it is completely ablated, then the shield will be completely useless to it. If you don't move, you'll be fine. If you move, you'll be like thunder. Just hope for one strike to succeed. This is the plan of the First Fleet. I'm really curious about what kind of person the commander of this fleet is. You'll never have the chance to see him again." Hound suddenly sighed heavily and said to Kaylan, "In addition to the minimum operating personnel, the commander who finalized this combat plan and the captain of the flagship must also have stay aboard this battleship. Anyone can abandon the ship, but they will not." After Hound finished speaking, he suddenly straightened his back and saluted the accelerating flagship. After a long period of time, Leighton told Kaylan in a chat, he had never seen an old dog salute posture so standard in his life. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi-san. Chapter 173. All ships retreat immediately and prepare for impact. All ships retreat immediately and prepare for impact. Alarms continued to echo in the communication channel of the First Fleet. All warships, including the autonomous supply ship that Kaylan and the others were on, began to slowly retreat. "Is there no other way?" Sakurina shouted with a hint of tears. "Why did you choose this method of almost dying together in the first place?" "Because there is simply no other way," Hound said, with helplessness in his tone. "Faced with creatures of the level of the prehistoric species, human power is too small. Even if we hesitate a little, we may even there is no chance of dying together. The flagship of the First Fleet has flown directly above Leviathan. The operators left behind on the ship are constantly adjusting the angle of impact, and the 1,650-meter-long ship gradually tilts over. Kylan, Lock the target and move forward. For the firm voice of the flagship captain came from the communication channel. Only then did Kaylan know that the name of the Yao-class aircraft carrier battleship of the First Fleet was also called Kylan. In a comic called Decisive Battle 1999, there is also an aircraft carrier called Kylan, and the ultimate fate of this aircraft carrier is to crash into the alien invaders with all the soldiers on board when it is unable to break through. The mothership. Kylan. Kaylan looked at the flagship that started to accelerate and muttered silently. Forward 4 refers to the operating term for the ship. The fourth gear is the largest gear among the acceleration gears. The Kiran's rear main thruster suddenly sprays out a tail flame hundreds of meters long. At the same time, the people on board detonated 4 more auxiliary thrusters. The huge momentum generated by the explosion pushed the Kylan straight towards the Leviathan below like a shell that escaped from the barrel. The mid-end of the Kylan burned violently. They had released the restrictions on the energy converter and threw all the crystals on the ship into the reactor. The excessive temperature even turned the surrounding flame-retardant materials into ashes. The unimaginably high temperature flames melted directly through the armor of the battleship and spat out from the ship. It was like a meteorite, carrying human anger and determination, slamming into the giant beast that was about to be resurrected. May the glory of mankind last forever. This was the last message sent by the Kylan to the fleet communication channel. Boom. Although all the protective partitions have been put down and the strength of the energy shield has been increased to the maximum, this powerful shockwave still shattered all the glass products on Ian's unmanned ship. Leighton, who had time to fasten himself to the seat with a seat belt, was rolled over several times like a donkey, and the mechanical parts of the prosthetic body made a clanging sound on the floor. The aftermath of the impact lasted for more than 10 seconds before the ship's violent tremors stopped. Kaylan wanted to check the situation outside, but found that all the screens in the bridge had been disabled, and dark red warning lights were flashing non-stop. Leighton! Leighton! Kaylan turned around and shouted loudly. I'm still alive. Leighton's feeble voice floated out from a corner. Kaylan quickly walked over and helped the big man up from the ground. Although Leighton was bruised and swollen from the fall, and looked extremely embarrassed, luckily he was not injured. In his own words, it's just that his head was a little dizzy. Is your robotic arm okay? Kaylan dragged Leighton to the edge of the porthole and said, the lifting mechanisms of these protective partitions are broken. Can you push the partitions up with brute force? I want to see what's going on outside. Brother, this thing is 12 centimeters thick. How can I push it? Leighton said, holding his head, but I can do it if I want to open the partition. After saying that, he directly used the welding gun built in the robotic arm to cut a hole in the bulkhead above the porthole, then separated 2 auxiliary robotic arms that were only as thick as a pen from the main arm, and got in through the hole. With the crackling of electric light inside, the thick protective partition suddenly bounced up. In an instant, a smell that was mixed with burnt and fishy smells surged up from the outside, making the hound that had just come over stagger and almost fall to the floor. The smell is too strong. We must be dozens of kilometers away from Leviathan, right? The hound said with some pain, and hurriedly put on the helmet again. Kaylan looked out the porthole and could only see the crooked warships around him. As for the Leviathan in the distance, it was just in the blind spot of the field of vision. It's wrong. You can't see this window. Leighton, please open the one opposite. Kaylan turned around and said. But before the two of them could reach another porthole, the communicator on the bridge started buzzing. Leviathan, his, vitals, his, have been exposed, his, the energy shield, disappeared, his, the entire ship, attacked, the target. Full ship attack. Leighton and Kaylan looked at each other in astonishment and immediately quickened their pace. No way, Leviathan hasn't been killed yet. Leighton's lips trembled, and he opened the porthole on the other side in the same manner. Finally, the appearance of Leviathan after the impact was finally completely presented before their eyes. On Leviathan's back, a bowl-shaped gap with a diameter of more than 3,000 meters appeared. Except for the spine, all the flesh and blood in the gap had completely disappeared. Black crystal spine. Kaylan suddenly discovered that this spine was no longer the white bone texture before, but had changed back to the appearance that Kaylan had seen in the video before. Inside the black spine, the dark red substance was quickly dimming. It seems successful. Kaylan focused his attention on the gap section again, where dense red flesh worms were attached, but these flesh worms seemed to have lost the ability to combine. A huge number of flesh worms gathered together, squirming crazily. But they couldn't merge together like before and become part of Leviathan's body. The connection between these bugs and Leviathan seems to have been stripped away by an invisible force during the impact and explosion just now. In that bowl-shaped gap, there should have been a heart. This heart is not only the core of Leviathan, but also the control center of those meat insects. But now, this center is directly controlled by the Kylin. Destroyed. The operational warships of the First Fleet were approaching at this moment, and countless ammunition, beams, and plasma balls fell on the opened gap. They seemed to be venting, without any reservation at all, and poured out all the firepower poured into the remains of the giant beast. For a moment, blood and flesh splattered everywhere, and the sound of explosions was endless. The gap torn open by the Kylin nearly doubled in just half a minute, and more parts of the black crystalline skeleton emerged from the shattered flesh and blood. But no matter how fierce the fleet's firepower was, these crystal skeletons were always unscathed. P.S. It's been half a month since I was discharged from the hospital. I have to go for a bone puncture review tomorrow. Thinking about the sour smell of the needle sucking out the bone marrow, I feel my scalp is numb. If I update, there should be another chapter if I have time, but I can't. If so, then nothing. To be precise, it should be today, because I scheduled to post this chapter after midnight. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 174. Look, the flesh and blood on Leviathan's body seems to be starting to rot, Layton whispered. Just as he said, not only the gap that was hit by the fire, but also other parts of Leviathan that were not bombarded began to gradually disintegrate, and large pieces of dark red meat fell from the giant beast's body. Peeling off, the exposed wound showed a gray and withered appearance, and putrid pus-like substance continuously flowed out from every crack in the giant beast's body. This time, Leviathan really slept. The entire process of apoptosis of Leviathan's body lasted for a full 6 hours. The majestic mountain range spanning the wasteland disappeared, and was replaced by a black crystal skeleton like a work of art. Kaylan always felt that it was a bit strange to use the word artwork to describe such things, but he couldn't find a better adjective for the moment. Leviathan's skeleton is shaped like a whale bone, but it is different from whale bones in many details. In addition to being many times larger than whales on Earth, the most distinctive feature of Leviathan's skeleton is its body. 6 pairs of large wing-shaped fins on both sides. Although Kaylan knew that this kind of creature once had the ability to fly in the sky, in his opinion, these 6 sets of wing fins alone could not provide the terrifying lift needed by this behemoth, but with the power of the dissolution of Vitan's physical tissue will most likely become one of the many unsolved mysteries on planet Alpha. The rotten and dissolved flesh and blood quickly seeped into the ground. The originally solid and thick surface rock formations now looked as if they were wrapped in a thick layer of gray-black dilapidated cotton wool. A warship fired a missile towards the ground, but after contacting the corroded rock formation, the missile seemed to be shot into a swamp. It quickly sank deeply into it. Then, a muffled sound came from the ground. It came out from below, and what rose up along with the muffled sound were only a few medium-sized bubbles. How come this ground has become like the corrupt swamp in the southern hemisphere? The hound who came to the porthole frowned and shook his head. That was a dead land, for a meaningless pursuit, that place devoured 19 of my brothers alive. I know the corruption swamp. Tens of thousands of years ago, that place should have been an area similar to the rainforest on the earth. However, the plants that grew there later all died in a short period of time due to some unknown reason. The rotten swamp plant corpses and moist soil mixed together and turned into peat. In addition, the rainfall in that place was heavy, so such a large area of swamps was formed. Kaylan said, but these things are obviously not related to peat. It doesn't matter at all. Whether it's peat or mud, in short, this big guy should be dead this time. The hound rubbed his chin irritably. It's really strange, there are so many crystal minerals in Leviathan's body, it's all gone, all that's left is a skeleton that can't even be hit by a plasma cannon. Manstein, the hound suddenly turned around and shouted to Manstein, who was so frightened that he jumped up from his seat and was stunned for several seconds before responding, "Mr. Hound, are you calling me for something? What proportion of the crystallized ore produced by Leviathan accounts for the total output of ARC? This proportion is not fixed every year. If it was last year, it accounted for almost 27%. The previous violence against him by the hound seemed to be in the heart of the Soma Consortium executive. It left quite a shadow. Now he was completely timid when speaking, for fear that a word coming out of his mouth would cause dissatisfaction on the other side. 27%? There are so many. The hound's eyes suddenly widened, and Manstein was so frightened that he took a few steps back, fell down on the chair, and then stood up quickly. Yes, last year's proportion was relatively small. In normal years, it usually accounts for more than 30% of ARC's total output. Ah, if only there was a computer that could be connected to ARC's public network now. Hound beat his chest and said, 27% of the output? What if we spent all the money we have now to buy crystal futures? If so, even if several relics with huge crystal reserves are discovered this year, it will definitely not affect the rising crystal prices. Such an opportunity to make a lot of money is a pity, sigh. No, there is still a chance. Kaylan patted the hound on the shoulder. The news about Leviathan will be delayed for at least a week to half a month before it will be announced to the public. Before that, the insiders will. There are only the top management of the ARC, the First Fleet and a few of us. If we return with the First Fleet at the same time and start operations immediately after returning to the ARC, even if we can't eat the fattest pieces of meat, we can still drink the soup. I can still drink enough. Kaylan said, turning to Manstein and smiling, Mr. Manstein, I have a way for you to pay off the loan sharks you owe as quickly as possible and make up for the misappropriation. Are you interested in the funding loopholes generated by the consortium's public funds? Yes. Of course I do, Manstein said excitedly. Although his performance before this had always been very awkward, completely sorry for his status as the top person in charge of the mining base, he was not a fool. Kaylandu said it for this reason, so he knew the hidden meaning very clearly. Well, I have a proposal. After I go back, I will intercede with Miss Sophia on your behalf to temporarily delay the consortium's processing of you, and you can use this time to help us make money as a client. As for this method of making money, I shouldn't need to explain it again, right? I know, Manstein nodded repeatedly. As a professional, handing over funds to Manstein for operation, both in terms of profit and efficiency, is much higher than that of laymen like Kaylan and others in the financial field, and Manstein, as an eyewitness of the Leviathan incident 1, plus the fact that Kaylan and the others have the handle, there is basically no risk of leaks. Time is very tight, but if the operation is done properly, the income is still very objective. As a commission, I can give you 10% of the profit. Of course, if there is a loss, the loss must be borne by you. There will be no loss, absolutely not, Manstein said categorically. If he could lose money on this kind of transaction, he would just jump off the deck of the Ark. But there is one more question. Kaylan turned his attention to Sakurai Nai, who was aside. As a member of the Mitsui Consortium, You should take this news back, right? Do you care about this? Sakurina glared at Kaylan. I really can't control this, but I think I still have to agree Miss Sakurai during this period and stay with us big men for the time being. After all, you just blatantly eavesdropped on our business secrets. Kaylan said. He looked up and gave the hound a look without leaving any trace, and the latter gave Kaylan a thumbs up secretly from where Sakurina could not see. The so-called trade secrets are actually just a reason, and the real purpose of Kaylan and the others in detaining Sakurai Na is to gain another powerful bargaining chip when negotiating with the Mitsui Foundation. After all, the missing Liao Zilang was most likely taken away by people from the Mitsui Consortium. Judging from the performance of Mitsuisuke and Sakurai Na, Yui and his group should not have returned to the Mitsui Consortium's back of Leviathan base. This shows that there is a high possibility that Liao Zilang is still alive. Why are you like this? It's not what I meant to hear, it was clearly what you said yourself, Sakurina yelled angrily. But the result is still the same. Kaylan grinned at the girl, and Layton immediately put a bracelet with a detonator on Sakurina's wrist. Do you know the consequences of doing this? Sakurina grabbed her wrist and asked sternly. Then what do you think we should do? Kill you now, and then throw the body into the swamp. Go back and tell the people of the Mitsui Consortium, I'm sorry. We almost rescued Ms. Sakurina, but unfortunately she still died. What do you think of this method? P.S. I originally wanted to ask for leave after the bone piercing today, but a big boss came to me as a leader, so I had to add more updates. It would be unreasonable not to add them. As for the leader before Bian, I will update first. I'll owe you a few days, and I'll make up for it when I feel better. Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chenmi-san. Chapter 175. Except for the troops who stayed to guard the remains of Leviathan and the scientific researchers who traveled with the fleet, the remaining ships of the First Fleet embarked on their return journey after confirming that Emergency 000 had been lifted. Kaylan and the others, as the only survivor of this incident, followed the First Fleet back to the Ark. As soon as they landed, they were escorted by a team of elite soldiers to a beautifully decorated reception room, and the person who received them in the reception room was Lieutenant General Maginot, who had dealt with Kaylan once before. In short, the general situation is like this: although you have made a huge contribution in this matter, except for verbal commendations, I have no way to award you even a medal. Maginot spread his hands and said, he said with regret, I'm really sorry, but given the current situation, this matter must be kept secret. Several other consortiums have also received the same notice. Keep it secret? Can it be kept? The gap in crystallization production is real. As long as the market fluctuates, someone will always guess the truth. Blindly blocking the news will probably be counterproductive. Hound Narrow Eyes said with a slightly mocking tone. But at least we can't announce this news now. Maginot looked directly into the Hound's eyes and said, Nick, the key point of this matter is not that we lost a rich crystal mine, but that Leviathan itself, the resurrection of the prehistoric species. As long as this kind of news is used by people with intentions, it can easily cause panic among the people, and then turmoil. Maginot took out a silver cigar box from his pocket, opened it, took out a dark brown cigar, put it on the tip of his nose and sniffed it vigorously, but did not light it, but took it back again. Inside the box. 20 years, ARC has not had an emergency with serial number 000 for 20 years, do you know what this means? Maginot stuffed the cigar box back into his pocket and continued, people have become accustomed to a stable life. This is no longer the era when the Ark just landed. You are deceiving yourselves. The Hound snorted coldly, not giving Maginot a good look at all, but the latter didn't seem to care at all. I also know that this kind of stability is actually an illusion created, but at least this illusion can prevent the vast majority of people from living in fear. But they have to face fear sooner or later, right? Kaylan, who had been silent, said. But not now, at least not. Maginot made a downward movement with his hand. This is also the meaning above. In short, no one can spread this matter without getting permission to lift the ban. As for the crystallization, officials will find ways to make up for the shortfall in production. Humph, I'll see how they can make up for such a big gap, Hound sneered. This was one of the main sources of his unhappiness at the moment. If the official took action to maintain stability, the market price of crystallization in a short period of time would not be if there are too many changes. As for using the information gap to speculate in crystallization futures, it will become completely empty talk. Although I can't get you metals, if you have other requests, you can tell me and I will respond to the above. Can I ask for money? The Hound rolled his eyes at Maginot and asked. Yes, but the maximum is only 3 million. If it is higher, it will be difficult to apply for approval, Maginot said. If you think it is too little, I can transfer another 2 million to you from my personal account. Only 5 million, how about sending beggars away? Hound said with a look of disgust. To be honest, Soma Consortium is more generous than you. The army and the consortium are different. It's not like you don't know, Nick. Those soldiers worked hard to earn first-class merit, and the reward was only 500,000 credits and a medal. 3 million is already the highest level. Already? Stop it, I don't want to listen to your theory. I'm no longer a soldier. Hound raised his hand. How about this? Let's change the conditions. What conditions? I want the right to purchase. The Hound seemed to have already thought about what he wanted. As soon as Maginot asked, he said it without hesitation. The right to buy something. You also know that the right to purchase new products from the Military Equipment Research Institute is that even the best goods that can be bought on the market are all second-hand goods bought from shopping malls. Those really good goods have no certain relationship. I can't even see it even if I want to, although I have some connections in this area. It is definitely not as useful as the purchase right recognized by the military. You really dare to mention it? Maginot looked at the Hound speechlessly. You just decide whether to give it to me or not. To be honest with you, even if you refuse to give it, I still have a way to get those things. The reason why I ask you for this permission is just that I don't want to trouble those old friends every time. Moreover, doesn't this just give you a step down? Otherwise, if you spend the 5 million, no one here would really appreciate it. Okay, if you want the right to purchase, then I will give you the right to purchase. But first of all, it is limited to equipment below the battalion level. If you go to the Equipment Research Institute to buy tactical nuclear warheads, it is none of my business to be arrested, Kino said. First of all, let's make it clear that it must be at the battalion level of the field force. I don't want the garbage from the garrison. Okay, you have a lot to do. Maginot waved his hand and immediately sent a bronze card over with a guard. The Hound took the card and looked at it twice before placing it with satisfaction into the inside pocket of the clothes. After everyone signed the confidentiality agreement, the espionage was over. However, when they were about to leave, Maginot called Kaylan in front of others. What's the matter? Lieutenant General Maginot, Kaylan asked in confusion. What makes Kaylan feel puzzled is not that Lieutenant General Maginot stopped him, but that he didn't seem to shy away from others watching them. From this point of view, Maginot's problem with him should be related to the one under the sea. The matter of the city and the secret sect has nothing to do with it. It's not me, it's the people from the Soma Consortium who are looking for you. Oh, and Mr. Manstein, they want you to go back to the consortium headquarters immediately after you have done something here. As for what the specific matter is, then I'm not sure. After hearing these words, K. Ian's performance was quite calm. On the contrary, Manstein, who had always had a negligible presence on the side, let out a weak groan. Originally he had hoped to help Kaylan. They speculated on crystallization futures to make up for the huge public funds hole, but obviously there is no such opportunity now. If there is another internal liquidation at this time, I am afraid that the former Soma Consortium executive will have to take care of his family tonight. Move to the ghetto. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 176. Kaylan never thought that the second time he saw Zofia Soma would be in the bedroom of the daughter of the Soma Consortium. When Kaylan opened the door and walked in, Zofia happened to be standing in front of a dressing mirror that was as tall as one person. She was wearing a white silk suspender dress that fit her body curves very well, combining her round shoulders and sexy. Her collarbone was displayed without hesitation, and her long pale golden hair was not tied up, but spread casually around her head. Compared to the heroic spirit she had when she was the captain of the Pioneer, she now has more of a charm unique to aristocratic women. "I feel like you seem a little restrained," Zofia turned around and said to Kaylan, "would you like something to drink? Coffee or tea? If you want to drink, I'm sorry, I don't have it here." "Shouldn't I feel restrained when I'm in a room with a beautiful woman without a third person, and this room is still that woman's bedroom?" Kaylan shrugged helplessly. "As for drinks, pure water is fine." Haha, Zofia covered her mouth and chuckled, "You are quite honest and interesting. Actually, I'm just not good at dealing with women, especially in such an ambiguous environment. There is a word on the internet specifically to describe people like me dash. Straight man, right?" Zofia smiled and put 2 glasses of clear drinking water on the coffee table. "Please sit down." "I didn't expect Miss Zofia to know this kind of internet vocabulary. I know what you imagine a noble lady looks like, of course. If you think I am that kind of person, you are wrong." Zofia sat down on the opposite side of the coffee table, picked up the cup, and gently take a sip. "No, I have never thought about it that way. I just feel that you now and the you I saw on the Pioneer seem to be completely different people. When I was on the Pioneer, I was the captain and needed to be responsible for all the people on the ship. But now, I am just myself," Zofia said, reaching out her hand to lift the hair hanging to her ears. Hair, even Kaylan, who has always been considered not close to women, has something wrong with his eyes. This action is really too feminine. Is this woman really trying to seduce me? But the next second, Zofia's expression became serious. "Mr. Kaylan, you should be able to guess why I came to you this time, right? That spy thing, right? Yes, I have found out that Yui is from the Arezaka Consortium, and my brother personally placed her next to me." Arezaka Consortium, Kaylan was slightly startled. He originally thought that the power behind Yui was either Mitsui Consortium or Mitsubishi Consortium, but he did not expect that it was the Arezaka Consortium with an alibi. However, after knowing the result, it makes perfect sense to extrapolate back. It is precisely because the Arezaka Consortium has this alibi that it can perfectly blame the spy incident on the Mitsui Consortium and the head of the Mitsubishi Consortium. On the other hand, no matter which one of the two the Soma Consortium takes revenge on, it is a situation that the Arezaka Consortium is happy to see. It's just, what does the Arezaka Consortium have to do with your brother? If your brother planted the spy, wouldn't this guy be tantamount to collaborating with the enemy? Kaylan asked. "My brother is the first in line to inherit the consortium, and I am the second in line. Of course, this order may change at any time due to the performance of the two of us. So you should understand, right? Is this another bloody drama about fighting for inheritance rights?" Kaylan curled his lips. "Then if you expose the collusion between your brother and the Arezaka Consortium, won't he be in trouble? Let me tell you, your brother, it's really stupid to actually want to use external forces to win the competition within the family. Is this any different from luring a wolf into the house?" "But I don't have enough evidence to overthrow him," Zofia said softly. "Besides, the relationship between the Soma family and the Arezaka family is not bad. The forces on my brother's side are now trying to find ways to promote a marriage between the two families. Is he planning to marry you off? Well, in this case, I have no possibility of competing with him, and, because of the spy matter. Because you can't prove that the spy was planted by your brother, and because this spy indirectly caused the Soma Consortium to suffer heavy losses in the Leviathan incident, this has led to a continuous decline in your evaluation within the family and the consortium. Wait until after they feel that you are not suitable to inherit the Soma Consortium, the marriage plan proposed by your brother will be implemented, and you will forever lose the chance to make a comeback, right? That's basically it. How do you know so clearly? Sophia looked at Kaylan in surprise. Do you want me to tell the truth? You say. This is how it is played in the most popular TV series at 8 o'clock in the prime time, Kaylan said very honestly. Sophia's expression became very strange for a moment, as if she was about to have an attack, but she was forced to endure it. And I also guessed that you came to me because you wanted me to help you collect evidence and catch the spy, by the way, right? Yes, and your companion named Liao Zilang is now in the hands of the Arezaka Consortium, Sophia said. So, our enemies are all the same. That's what I say, but rescuing hostages and collecting evidence are not the same thing. Besides, we are just a group of relic hunters, neither mercenaries nor private detectives. This kind of thing is not ours at all. Within the professional field, I not only want you to help me collect evidence, but if possible, I also hope that you can completely bring down the Arezaka Consortium. Sophia looked at Kaylan and said extremely seriously. If you wouldn't think you were a pervert, I really want to touch your forehead, Miss Sophia. Kaylan also looked at Sophia sincerely and said, I suspect that you have burned out your head. Miss Sophia. Moreover, the task you proposed is no less difficult than exploring S-class ruins, assuming, if we can complete this task, how much do you plan to pay us? In terms of reward, Sophia suddenly stood up. What do you think of me? Ha! If you can bring down the Arezaka Consortium, I will marry you and make you the husband of the future heir of the Soma Consortium. Kaylan carefully observed Sophia's expression, while the latter met his gaze indifferently. I'm not kidding, Sophia said. Sooner or later, I have to choose a spouse. Instead of marrying the man assigned to me by the consortium, I might as well choose a man that I like. She was indeed not joking. Kaylan knew in her heart that this woman was telling the truth. Can I choose to refuse? After nearly a minute, Kaylan said, I always feel that the identity of the husband of the future heir of the consortium does not seem to be that safe. P.S. The rich woman took the initiative to go up to her, but Kaylan said, damn it. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chenmi-san. Chapter 177. Why? Sophia was slightly surprised. You must know that if the sentence is thrown out, it will definitely cause an earthquake in ARC's upper-class social circle. Even if the condition is to marry into the Soma family, they will not consider it. Countless young talents were fighting for their heads for this, but the man in front of him from a commoner class, he actually asked himself if he could refuse. Well, if I have to give you a reason. Kaylan thought for a while and said, the high EQ version or the low EQ version, which one do you want to hear, Miss Sophia? Two kinds, Sophia said expressionlessly. The high EQ version. I think we have known each other for less than a month, and we have only met twice in total. We don't know each other at all, so let's talk about marriage, let alone the basis of our relationship. Is the marriage progressing a little too fast? What about the low EQ version? Sophia asked. I think this might be a trap. Suddenly, the room fell into silence, and the atmosphere became a little awkward. After a long time, Sophia regained her composure and asked in as calm a tone as possible, why do you think this is a trap? Any normal person who hasn't been possessed by those insects will think this is a trap. Kaylan smiled helplessly. You may not think so from your point of view, but if you look at it from a third party's point of view, if I agree to this condition, I will obviously be like a low IQ tool person who is deceived by beauty. Kaylan paused, took a sip of water, and continued, to put it in a more understandable way, it's like in a common fairy tale, the king promised the warrior, as long as you can defeat the evil dragon, I will take the princess away. Marry you same, but in fact, in the dragon's cave, the armor and weapons of the warriors it had eaten were piled as high as a hill. But what if the warrior really killed the dragon? Sophia asked as if she was angry. First of all, I can't be sure whether I am the protagonist warrior who killed the dragon or one of the supporting warriors who gave away his head. Secondly, this is just a fairy tale, and in reality, those warriors who killed the dragon often becomes an evil dragon, and most of the princesses end up being married off to other countries as bargaining chips for political marriages. So, if I were the prince of a neighboring country instead of a little-known warrior, I would definitely support your proposal, Miss Sophia. After all, no man doesn't like beautiful women. It's a pity that I'm probably not even a warrior. Kaylan laughed, so don't make fun of me. If I really fall in love with Miss Sophia, it will be over. Is falling in love with me a bad thing? There was a hint of imperceptible sullenness in Sophia's tone. Isn't it bad that you will die if you are not careful? Kaylan said with a smile. Then facing the threat of heretical sex, wouldn't it be bad? Sophia asked tit for tat. What are you talking about? What kind of heretical sect? Although the expression on Ian's face did not show any change, his heart suddenly thumped. This beautiful woman, the information she possesses, it seems, much more than I imagined. It's the heretical sect that brought the seed of corrosion to the ark, Sophia said word by word. What is a seed of erosion? An indigenous creature? I've never heard of it, Miss Sophia. If you plan to use this method to trick me, you may be disappointed, because I is truly one, nothing, everything, and knowledge. You can choose to continue to act stupid, but I think the information provided by General Maginot will not be biased. Sophia flicked her hanging hair again, and then said, due to the relationship between the pioneer and me, the military and the Security Bureau have always maintained a close cooperative relationship. It can be noticed that Sophia particularly emphasized the word I in this sentence. She said that I have always maintained a close cooperative relationship with the military and the Security Bureau, not the Soma Consortium. Is this a test? Kaylan thought to himself, but he still did not choose to be honest with the other party. Instead, he asked with a rather interested expression, oh, it seems like this matter is very confidential. Really? I'm quite curious, can you tell me something? But if you know that you will be restricted from freedom or simply silenced, then forget it. You found the missing Team 776 in the undersea city, Sophia said again. Oh, it turns out that the Soma Consortium went to investigate the origin of that batch of equipment, so what? Regarding this point, Kaylan did not think that the other party was deceiving him. After all, he was rescued in full view of the public. There was definitely no way to fool the ship's crew and the origins of those antique equipment. Even Maginot came to him because he got the information provided by the Soma Consortium. Do you know this person Liao Xing? Kaylan cursed in his mind. The other party had already brought out the key role of Liao Xing. He obviously knew the details of the conversation between him and Maginot. It seems that the person named the Maginot guys really sold themselves out. This made Kaylan couldn't help but be more wary of the pot-bellied general. Fortunately, he didn't tell the whole truth last time, otherwise, he might not know how he died. Sophia can know this information, and the people of the heretical sect may also know that they have penetrated Ark to an unimaginable extent. Otherwise, the arrest operation of the Security Bureau would not have failed. Kaylan suddenly felt that his situation seemed to have suddenly become extremely dangerous. Do you feel that your situation has suddenly become very dangerous? Sophia chuckled softly. Compared to this, the Arezaka Consortium does not seem so scary. No, the Arezaka Consortium is more terrifying. I heard that those Japanese people would pour those who offended them into concrete piles and then sink them to the bottom of the sea. Then what if I tell you that the top brass of the Arezaka consortium may be colluding with that heretical sect? Isn't that more dangerous? I just want to stay as far away from this Arezaka consortium as possible, Kaylan said without hesitation. What if they have already targeted you? Grass. P.S. After this chapter was sent out, I discovered that the chapter number was wrong. There were two chapters 172. This chapter should be chapter 173, and the next chapter is chapter 174. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, and Chenmi-san. Chapter 178. Why would they target me? This makes no sense. Because you entered the underwater city and came out alive, because you saw the remains of the members of Team 776 with your own eyes and got their former equipment. Sophia said. Why do I feel as if the whole world already knows about this? Kaylan felt a little headache and stretched out his hand to press his forehead hard. Ha, I found, you look pretty cute when you're deflated. You don't have any surveillance equipment in this room, right? I even suspect that our current conversation has been leaked. Ian's eyes subconsciously turned to the corner of the ceiling. You can rest assured, I just checked it before you came in, Sophia said, suddenly bringing a laptop aside and typing quickly on the keyboard with her slender fingers. Huh? What are you doing? Kaylan was a little curious, but for etiquette reasons, he still did not put his head over to peek at the content on the screen. Anyway, you are already being targeted by the Arezaka consortium, so you don't mind being targeted by more people, right? I remember that you Chinese people seem to have a proverb, there are too many lice but it doesn't itch, right? Sophia said, turning the notebook around. Kaylan saw at a glance the homepage of the Soma consortium on the screen, and the red and bold message at the top. Miss Sophia Soma, the second-in-line heir to the Soma consortium, got engaged today to Mr. Kaylan, the special consultant of the consortium. The specific execution date of the engagement will be announced soon. Although only 3 seconds have passed since the release, the number of clicks has exceeded 200,000, and the popularity of the entire network has directly climbed into the top 10, and is about to break through the top 5. If Logu and the others see this news, their eyes will probably fall off. Kaylan can even imagine what kind of faces those guys will show to him after he goes back. You. Kaylan opened his mouth slightly, looked at the screen, and then at the beautiful woman behind the screen. He held it in for a long time before he could say a word. Are you a gangster? If I am a gangster, then who are you? A good girl bullied by gangsters. Sophia suddenly stretched out her hand and hit Kaylan hard on the head. Don't you think that the king may not fulfill his obligations? Promise. What if the princess made a lifelong commitment to the warrior before he went on the expedition? It's just, you can regret the engagement, right? Kaylan rubbed his forehead and said. Then what do you want? Do you want me to give you a baby first? Is it right here? Kaylan couldn't help but glance at the exquisite big bed next to him. Well, the quilt seems to be made of real silk. What are you thinking? Another brain-breaking moment. Sophia seemed to be addicted to this childish behavior. You said it yourself. Kaylan felt a little aggrieved. First, change the topic. Sophia glared at Kaylan, exhaled forcefully, and then opened another web page. Kaylan quickly glanced at the web page. This was the home page of the Arezaka consortium. Unlike Mitsui and Mitsubishi, which were already behemoths in the old era, the Arezaka consortium is an emerging force that gradually developed during the long journey of the Ark. In the 158th year of the new era, the Arezaka Corporation was just a company that produced VR equipment and computer chips. A small technology company, but by the year 405, in less than 300 years, it had become a supergroup that could compete with Mitsui and Mitsubishi. Moreover, it is said that during the rise of the Arezaka consortium, both Mitsui and Mitsubishi suffered considerable losses. Therefore, although these three consortiums are all controlled by Japanese people, the relationship between them is extremely bad. In areas bordering their forces, fights between violent gangs often occur. As for the main businesses of the Arezaka Foundation, in addition to the manufacturing industry when it started, it also includes banking, legal, and security services. In addition, it also takes over nearly one-third of the custom industries on the entire arc. At its peak, the number of young girls working in nightclubs owned by the Arezaka Foundation once exceeded 10,000. These are not the important points, the important point is here. Sophia's fingers flicked a few times on the touchpad and entered a subweb page called Arezaka Samurai Club. If you want to attack the Arezaka Consortium, you must start here. Warrior Club. Is there something wrong with this place? Kaylan glanced at Sophia. Although he has not yet decided whether to agree to this woman's request, he will listen to her first. Even if he chooses to give up in the end, what more can he do? It's also good to have some information. On the surface, this is just a gathering place for old era Bushido culture enthusiasts, but in fact, this is a secret espionage organization within the Arezaka Consortium. This organization has another name, Six Samurai. Six warriors. Kaylan always felt that this word seemed familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen or heard it. Yes, the spy named Yui is a member of the Six Samurai Warriors, and the leaders of this organization are six biochemically modified warriors with extremely strong strength. Biochemically modified samurai. Kaylan tapped the coffee table with his index finger. When he said this, he suddenly recalled the knife marks he had seen in the corridor of the main control building of the base, and Asano Akira's opinion of this knife user. Evaluation: from this point of view, is this person one of these six biochemically modified warriors? Among these six biochemically modified warriors, are any of them good at using long knives? We found traces of this weapon in the mining base. Long sword? Do you mean the katana? If it is used as the main weapon, there are two of the six warriors. Well, that man should be using a long sword that is nearly 2 meters long. If I remember correctly, the Japanese seem to call this kind of samurai sword notaki. Kaylan tried his best to remember. Said the details mentioned in the previous chat with Asano Akira. If it is confirmed that the weapon is the notaki, then the target can basically be confirmed. It is the biochemical warrior called Iroh among the six samurai. The transformation level is level 8, and 9% of the body is more than 10 tissues and organs were replaced with cyber-style reinforced parts, using a notaki called Bizun Nagasaki Hikari. Just like the hunter among you named Asano Akira, this sword is also completely made of nino alloy. As for his famous technique, it is called Yanhui. Although the relevant information is missing, it is speculated that it may be an extremely fast sword drawing technique. Sophia spoke very fast when she became serious. She seemed to be a completely different person. 8th level transformation level. No wonder Asano Akira said that the opponent is extremely powerful. You must know that the success rate of level 7 transformation surgery is only 20%, and an 8th level transformation person must at least perform multiple success rates on the basis of level 7. Lower level of transformation surgery. It is not an exaggeration to say this. Every 8th level transformation person who walks off the operating table alive is built from the corpses of countless losers. But compared to the 8th level transformation level, Kaylan was more concerned about another thing. Since you said that the Arezaka Consortium is in collusion with that heretical section, then are there any seeds of erosion in the bodies of these guys called the Six Samurai? P.S. The prototype of the Arezaka Foundation comes from the Polish jackass game Cyberpunk 2077, and the prototype of the Six Samurai comes from the Six Samurai decks in the card game Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, among which Six Samurai Iroh. The prototype character is Sasaki Kojiro, a famous swordsman from the Warring States period in Japan. P.P.S. I also really want to arrange for the protagonist and the rich woman to create a human on the spot, but then this book will be gone. If there is a welfare plot in the future, I mean if there is, it should be an extra chapter, put it in the all booking group maybe, Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chenmi-san. Chapter 179. This, cannot be determined, but judging from the information currently available, those who can be used as containers for the seeds of erosion are without exception natural persons who have not undergone biochemical transformation. As for whether the seeds of erosion will interact with cyberspace sky-eye bodies repel each other, so we have no way of knowing, Zofia said. This information, does it belong to you or the military? Kaylan asked. This is information shared with us by the military, Zofia replied, because the Pioneer was involved in the Undersea City incident, we know a little more than other consortiums. But sometimes the military's intelligence may not be accurate, Kaylan said meaningfully. Among other things, Ivan still has a small amount of cells from the seed of erosion in his body, although these cells have been suppressed by the stalagmite fragments. Yes, but you must know that Ivan's robotic arm was installed directly on the infected site. However, from the completion of the operation until now, there have only been a small number of rejections within the normal range in the early stages, and they were all controlled with drugs. Wait, as for the impact of the cells of the seed of erosion on the cyborg prosthetic body, it is completely invisible. Although Kaylan didn't know whether the heretic sect had such stalagmite fragments that could inhibit the cells of the seed of corrosion, judging from the containers he had come into contact with, it was clear that they had another method of controlling the seed of corrosion. From a technical perspective, this method should be considered very mature. In all likelihood, it is the research result left over from the Alpha civilization. Over the long years, the Alphas have created countless biological weapons. Compared with a terrifying existence like Vitan, the corrosion seed can only be regarded as a dispensable pawn, but since then from another perspective, behemoths like Leviathan were not completely completed until the demise of the Alpha civilization. However, small pawns like seeds of corrosion can be regarded as having a relatively high degree of completion among these biological weapons. Kind of. If another successor obtains the complete instructions for use of the seed of corrosion, it should not be difficult to implant this thing into a biochemically modified human body. The combination of an 8th-level modified human and a corrosive seed, in terms of individual combat effectiveness, it is already able to walk sideways on the Ark. Even a tactical mecha with thick armor and powerful firepower cannot do so in a one-on-one situation. You can definitely win against something like this. If you are worried that the strength of the 6 warriors is too terrifying. This is no longer a question of whether it's scary or not. Even if a group of us fight against one of them, without using the heavy weapons that are prohibited on the Ark, there is no way we can be their opponent, let alone something like this. There are 6 guys at this level in total. Kaylan shook his head and said, this is the gap in physical strength, we are hunters, not dead soldiers. This is exactly what I want to say, there are not many people in the entire Ark who can challenge the 6 warriors head on, however, they also have weaknesses. Weakness, Ian's first reaction was to think of assassination, but then he immediately rejected it. For people with a certain level of strength like the 6 warriors, even the success rate of assassination is extremely low, unless they use prohibited levels. Weapons. Yes, their weakness is in their brains. Sophia stretched out her long fingers and tapped her temple. Have they received brain modification? Kaylan asked doubtfully, isn't this impossible? According to the current level of biotechnology, most of the human brain is still a restricted area for modification. The so-called prostheticization of the brain is, at best, tampering with the visual and auditory nerves to directly convert the information obtained by external receivers. Information is simply transmitted to the brain, or induction electrodes are placed inside the skull to output signals through brain waves to control some electronic and mechanical devices. As for directly modifying the brain itself, there have been no successful examples. Of course, brain surgeries that have appeared in the old era, such as lobotomies that can produce idiots in batches, are not included in the category of brain modification. No, but in order to ensure the absolute loyalty of the 6 samurai, people from the Arasaka consortium placed brainwave monitoring chips and miniature remote-controlled bombs in their heads. The positions are close to the brain stems. As long as they are detonated, they will die. It seems that the person you need, Miss Sophia, is not us, but a hacker with sufficient skills. By chance, I know a lot of such friends, and maybe I can help introduce a few to you. Kaylan was somewhat agitated. He spread his hands helplessly. Also, what makes me wonder is, since the military knows that the Arasaka consortium has colluded with that heretical sect, why doesn't the military take action? Even if the military doesn't take action, what about the Security Bureau? Those people from DOS, are you afraid that you hate the sect so much that your teeth itch? Because there is no evidence, Sophia sighed. Actually, the collusion between the Arasaka consortium and the heretical sect is just my personal speculation. This beautiful lady, please don't tell me the source of this speculation. Is it some kind of woman's intuition? Kaylan suddenly felt an urge to get up and leave immediately. Of course not, Sophia said urgently, her fair cheeks slightly reddened by emotion. I have collected a lot of information and stored it in this computer. You can click on the fourth file on the desktop. Watch for yourself. Kaylan didn't speak, but silently opened the folder Sophia mentioned. The first information was a wanted warrant. The wanted person was a vicious-looking black man. A very conspicuous scar extended from his neck to his chest. In addition, on his body, there are also many wounds that look like they were torn out by sharp claws. On top of the wanted poster, there is a bright red stamp saying the suspect has been confirmed dead. Kaylan clicked on the second piece of information, which was a brief file on the wanted criminal. Raynard Brown, a former Field Force non-commissioned officer, opened a machine repair shop in the West 10th District after retiring. He was accused of participating in more than 10 vicious cases involving murder and dismemberment. He resisted arrest and injured multiple police officers. He then escaped into the heavy industrial park in the West 12th District and attempted to escape from the ARC through the waste discharge port, but was shot dead on the spot by a garrison soldier. This is just a cover-up to cover up the truth, because as many as 30 civilians were killed by RENAS, and the matter was very big, so the public must be given an explanation, Sophia added on the side. What about the truth? In the next document. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chenmi-san. Chapter 180. There are many more stamps on the second document than on the wanted warrant, and most of them carry the words confidential, top secret, etc., and at the top of the document, there are the emblem of the ARC security agency DOS. It is also the file of Raynard Brown, but in this file, he is not called murderer, but container. Kaylan checked it carefully, and there should be no problem with the authenticity of the document. There is no need for Sophia to falsify this kind of thing. In other words, this guy named Raynard Brown has a corrosive parasite in his body. The seed is basically a certainty. The person who killed him was not a soldier from the garrison, but a special handling team affiliated with DOS. This guy is a container, and what next? Kaylan raised his head and glanced at Sophia opposite. He is also a member of the Arasaka Samurai Club, Sophia said. There is no inevitable relationship between the two. Even if Leonard is a black man, black people may also like the Japanese samurai sword culture of the old era, right? Is this just a coincidence? Kaylan pondered. But the membership fee of the Arasaka Samurai Club is extremely expensive. With Leonard's income, even if he sells his machine repair shop, its value will not be worth the quarterly membership dues that club members need to pay. But according to the investigation, Leonard had already joined the Arasaka Samurai Club 2 years ago. Is it possible that he has other gray income? Such as weapons smuggling, illegal drugs, etc. As a retired non-commissioned officer in the field force, He may have some connections in this area, Kaylan said. Well, even if he has enough gray income to pay the high membership fees, in the 2 years since he joined the Arezaka Samurai Club, he has only stepped into the building where the club is located 8 times, and every time, it happened to be 3 months apart. Sophia lifted the suspenders of her long dress that was about to slip off her shoulders and continued, I once sent people to track him. The day after every time he went to the club, the garbage in his residence there will always be an empty glass test tube with a sealed lid in the processing box. Is the glass test tube some kind of drug? Have you done a detailed inspection of the test tube? Kaylan asked. If the information provided by Zofia is correct, then there seems to be something wrong with this club. It was done, but the inside of the test tube was washed very clean, and there was no residue at all. Zofia said with some regret, at first, we thought it was just an illegal drug. At that time, I didn't know about corrosion. The purpose of investigating Leonard is just to catch the Arezaka Consortium suspected of drug trafficking. If it's an illegal drug, he doesn't have to take it back to his residence for use. It's not uncommon to have drug parties in clubs, and, as far as I know, those addictive drugs that are common nowadays are no one has an attack interval of more than a week, and once every 3 months has never been heard of. Kaylan gently dragged his fingers on the touchpad, and the photo of the glass test tube was immediately enlarged several times. There are no traces of glue left after the label was torn off on the surface of the test tube, and there is no assembly line production batch number etched with laser. However, judging from the specifications and materials of the test tube, Kaylan cannot determine the origin and purpose of this test tube. So, you suspect that the contents of this test tube are related to the seed of corrosion? Kaylan raised his head and looked at Zofia, only to find that the other party had already stood up and was leaning over to stare at the screen in front of him. In this, under the posture and angle, Kaylan naturally saw some things he shouldn't have seen. Is this really natural? But the size is too big. Such thoughts flashed through Ian's head, and he immediately looked away calmly and turned his gaze again. Put it back on the computer screen. Well, just like many high-level biochemically modified people need regular injections of anti-rejection drugs, I suspect that these parasitized vessels may also need some kind of medicine to control the erosion seeds in their bodies. Zofia, he didn't notice Ian's little action just now and said to himself, have you checked with someone from the military or DOS about this? If the containers of seed of corrosion require regular injections or some kind of stability maintenance medication, they should be the ones who have handled many containers. Know this? I asked, but the military said that the work of handling containers is basically led by DOS, and they only assist from the side, but DOS did not give me a clear response. Is this to keep it a secret? But it's meaningless. If you want to keep it a secret, you shouldn't even know about the existence of the seed of corrosion. I always feel like something went wrong. This is the usual style of DOS. Zofia sighed, their people have always been indifferent. If it weren't for the fact that I happened to be there when they requisitioned the Pioneer icebreaker on the ship, I still don't know anything about the seed of corrosion. And, even so, Zofia continued, these information were revealed to me by the military, not from DOS. The entire Soma consortium, including me, knows these inside stories. There won't be more than 10 people. But that Yuyi is one of the less than 10 people, right? Kaylan said, a little depressed. Yes. In other words, the information you have now is basically known to the Arezaka Consortium, including me, the Undersea City and the 776 Special Team, as well as your previous investigation of the Arezaka Consortium and the Samurai Club. They all knew. Yes. Do you mind if I use foul language? Although I don't mind, as my fiancé, you still have to pay a little attention to your image. Zofia suddenly stretched out a finger and placed it on Ian's lips. In the eyes of those boring media, these things can be used to make a big fuss. I don't want you to be smeared by public opinion as a rude and uneducated person. I said, Aren't you tired from living like this? Kaylan had a wry smile on his face. Tired, but I'm used to it, but now I can really relax. Sophia said, then stretched out as if Kaylan didn't exist, and the large area of fair skin under her armpits was directly exposed. In Ian's sight. This woman, could she still be playing the beauty trap? Kaylan thought to himself, but at this moment, the cell phone in his pocket suddenly rang. It was an anonymous email. Although it was anonymous, Kaylan knew who sent it to him. He is the only person who would send anonymous emails to this account. The content of the email was very short, with only one sentence, and a big question mark at the end. The Andrew you asked me to check last time was kidnapped, could it be you who did it? Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 181. Just when Kaylan wanted to reply, of course not, a strong warning sign came from the bottom of his heart. For safety reasons, the villa where Sophia lives is completely shrouded in an electromagnetic shielding field. In this shielding field, all radio equipment will be interfered, even Sophia herself. The laptop I use also uses a physical network cable to connect to the external network. Kaylan glanced at the signal icon in the upper right corner of the phone screen. As expected, it was full. That can only mean that the security measures of this villa are now in a closed state. The next second, a series of explosions sounded from far to near in the corridor outside, followed by the sound of hard-soled rubber boots colliding with the wooden floor. Within a few seconds, the sound of footsteps was heard in front of the door. Stopped. Be careful. Ian's first reaction was to rush to the switch, turn off the lights in the room, then turn around and throw Sophia, who was in shock, to the ground. Bang, a deafening gunshot sounded outside the door, and countless metal projectiles penetrated the solid wood door with exquisite patterns carved on it, smashing the priceless furniture and handicrafts in the room to pieces. Kaylan could even feel the burning pain when the projectile grazed his back. Bang. Bah. Bah, 3 more shots were fired. At this moment, the floor of the entire room was covered with fragments of furniture. As for the wall facing the door, it was covered with fist-size bullet holes. Judging from the sound of the gunfire, the attacker should have used a strike semi-automatic shotgun, and it should also be a Bulldog model specially designed for CQB, indoor close quarters combat. This thing has a large ammunition capacity of 12 rounds. The drum and barrel are also shortened by nearly half compared to the standard model. Whether it is the sustainability of firepower or the coverage area of the projectiles, they are not comparable to conventional pump-action shotguns. The delicate body beneath her was very soft, and the skin that could be broken even exuded a faint fragrance. However, in this situation, Kaylan had no intention of feeling this charming feeling. All he could think about was how to escape from this place alive. Where are your security personnel? Kaylan lowered his voice and asked, are they all working for a living? The attackers have all arrived at the door of your bedroom, and the alarm hasn't even sounded yet. I don't know. There was a hint of nervousness in Sophia's voice. She held Ian's waist tightly with one hand, and fumbled with the other hand to drop the radio on the ground. Grab the laptop. The computer has been damaged. Kaylan glanced at the notebook that had been broken into 2 parts, and subconsciously reached into the pocket of his clothes, but then he remembered that when he entered Sophia's before entering the villa, he had handed over all the weapons he carried to the bodyguards downstairs. Do you have a gun in your room? Kaylan and Sophia were almost face to face, and the hot breath he exhaled when he spoke could even blow directly into Sophia's ears. There is, it's on the bedside table, Sophia said softly. Her face turned crimson, and she didn't know whether it was because of fear or other reasons. You're holding my waist like this, I can't move. Oh. Sophia immediately let go of her arm after hearing this. Just lie down like this and don't move. Don't stand up, Kaylan warned her, while he carefully moved his limbs and crawled towards the bedside table little by little. Boom. 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 the gunman outside the door fired 3 more shots into the room. Fortunately, due to the angle, these 3 shots still did not hurt Kaylan and Zofia, who were lying on the ground. But at this time, the door was already broken into pieces. The person outside just kicked a hole in it, big enough for people to pass through, and bent down to get in. At this time, Kaylan finally got the pistol in Zofia's bedside table. Compared with Sakurai Na's almost toy-like pocket self-defense pistol, Zofia's choice was more sensible. At this time, she chose a highly customized M1K1 small caliber gauze pistol. The surface of the gun body was plated. It is covered with a layer of rose gold with a skin-like texture. The front sight and the rear sight are inlaid with dazzling diamonds, and both sides of the grip are pasted with a piece of very smooth polished milky white amber. Kaylan even suspected that this alone the price of the gun is probably more expensive than Layton's mechanical prosthetic body. Since the M1K1 uses steel needle-type electromagnetic bullets with a caliber of 1.2 mm, although the magazine is not large, its ammunition capacity reaches an exaggerated 45 rounds. In fully automatic shooting mode, its firepower is no less than on an assault rifle. But just when Kaylan pointed his gun at the figure who broke into the room, he found that the trigger of the pistol was locked tightly and could not be pressed down at all. Damn it, Kaylan glanced at a groove above the grip, and instantly understood what was going on. This highly customized gauze pistol uses a fingerprint-type safety lock, and only then can it be unlocked. Go on, he threw the gun in his hand to Zofia, and he picked up a half-remained vase and smashed it on the attacker's head. The lights outside the corridor were on, but the room was completely dark. The man had just entered the darkness from the bright environment. His eyes could not adapt for a while, and he was directly hit by the flying vase. Got my head off. With a bang sound, the vase completely turned into pieces, and the attacker just shook his head slightly. Through the light coming from outside the room, Kaylan saw that the man was wearing a full coverage helmet made of carbon fiber material on his head. The blow just now did not cause any harm to him at all. Fortunately, Zofia had already unlocked the fingerprint lock safety at this time and threw the pistol to Kaylan again. Kaylan caught the pistol and pulled the trigger repeatedly. Several cold lights flashed, and the electromagnetic bullets like steel needles penetrated many vital points on the attacker's body in an instant. His body shook a few times, and then he faced down heavily. The ground hit the floor. Lie down and don't move, Kaylan said to Zofia again. He changed the pistol to his left hand, and with his right hand he took out a stone awl from his pocket. When he was searched by Zofia's security just now, originally, this stone awl was also going to be confiscated, but Kaylan forcibly kept it on the grounds that this is an amulet given to me by my friend. It is a handicraft, not a weapon. Kaylan rushed to the door and carefully turned the body over with his toes. Fortunately, there was no abnormality in the killed attacker. He was not a container.